Shabbat Shalom, my friends. You know, living outside of the state of Israel, it's easy to miss the fact that we are in a holy season right now. Now, don't be worried. Passover really has concluded, and Lag BaOmer and Shavuot are still a ways off. But these days nevertheless constitute a holy season. Let's see. Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, was observed on Thursday, April 8th. Yom HaZikaron, the day on which those who have fallen in defense of Israel or those who were killed in terrorist incidents will be remembered. And that will be on Wednesday, April 14th. And on April 15th, the State of Israel will celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, its 73rd birthday. So, in a matter of a week, we move from mourning the 6 million to mourning the almost 24,000 who have died in defense of the State of Israel or through terrorist events, to celebrating the reality of a newborn Jewish state. This really is a sacred season. Sacred season. In chapter 3 of the book of Ecclesiastes, we are reminded that in the cycle of human life, there are times to weep and there are times to dance. In Israel, that divide is between wailing sirens and moments of silence when the country comes to an absolute standstill, to a situation in which the air quality in Israel disastrously plummets as Israelis take out their mangalim, their portable grills, and eat copious amounts of grilled meat al ha'esh, on those burning coals. The air impossible to breathe. There's mystery in all of this. Horrendous suffering, refusing to disappear in the presence of historic celebration. One, the other, always both. Neither gives way. The pain is unrelieved, and the joy is boundless. A holy season. There are profound mysteries in our Sedra as well. We'll be reading Shmini, Leviticus chapter 9, verse 1 and following. Our text also begins here with celebration and ends with absolute catastrophe. It is the 8th and final day of the celebration of the dedication of the tabernacle and of the ordination of Aaron and his sons as Kohanim. God manifests the divine self through flame that flashes down from heaven and consumes the sacrifice. But then Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two oldest sons, newly ordained Kohanim, do something that is, to this day, absolutely incomprehensible. They bring what is called in the text an Eish Zara, an alien fire, to offer up incense to God. What was the Eish Zara? We don't know. Was it an offering of self-serving arrogance? An act of devotion to God, but one that broke all boundaries? We just don't know. What we do know is that once again God manifested the divine self through a flame that flashes down from heaven, but this time that flame consumes not a sacrifice, but Nadav and Avihu. The dread mystery is compounded by what Moshe Rabbeinu, says to his grieving brother Aaron. Moses tells Aaron that his sons deserved their fate. And so Aaron, the text says, fell silent. Adding insult to injury, Moses then instructs Aaron and his two remaining sons not to engage in normal mourning practices, because if they do, then God will strike them down as well. A mystery wrapped in a mystery. Was Moses simply a failure as a grief counselor, incapable of empathy? Was he teaching us that religious leaders must never give way to natural human emotions? Try as they might, our teachers and sages never have come close to reaching a consensus about what went on that Shmini, the 8th day of consecration and ordination. Every suggested resolution is both interesting and flawed. And then, got this mystery, got that mystery. In the middle of our text, our Sedra, chapter 11 in Leviticus, another mystery manifests itself. What? A mystery that is deeply profound and deeply troubling. God speaks to the Israelites saying, "These are the creatures that you may eat from among all the land animals," and proceeds to list a whole variety of permitted and forbidden animals. We are given a full recitation of which animals are permitted to be eaten and which animals are forbidden, which are tameh, impure, which are tahor, pure, tameh, tahor. And there are signs, very clear, very simple. Land animals that have cleft hooves, chews the cud, may be eaten. Not the camel, not the rabbit, not the swine. And what about critters that live in the water? Fins and scales, no exception. And what about those birds? Ravens and eagles, vultures and owls, storks and bats? Tameh, impure, abominations. And if you have a few idle moments this week, check out the wide-ranging struggle among halakhic authorities as to whether or not a turkey can be kosher. Really, it is frightening to think that we could have lost that battle and turkey would have been forbidden to us. And as for those creepy crawly things, locusts may be eaten along with crickets and grasshoppers. Needless to say, crocodiles and mice, chameleons and geckos do not make the cut. Keep your hands off that gecko. As Yitz Greenberg points out, Kashrut is one of the defining practices of Jewish tradition, and in our Sedra, we find the foundations. Jews sacrifice their lives in order to not defile these core mitzvot. We have been scorned for our hyper concern over foods that may or may not be eaten and how those foods are to be prepared. We have been vilified for having adopted practices that make it difficult for observant Jews to eat together with non-Jews as well as with Jews whose concern for kashrut is suspect. And even as the laws of what may or may not be eaten appear mainly in Leviticus and later in Deuteronomy, and throughout, of course, later rabbinic texts, an unexpected anomaly appears. The ideal for human beings is to be vegetarian. Vegetarianism is the most deeply rooted ideal and has been so since the time of the story of Noah. Not only that, but the prophet Isaiah makes it abundantly clear that in the Messianic age, we will all return to vegetarianism, and that includes meat-eating animals. Isaiah says the lion will sit down and eat straw when the Messiah arrives. So kashrut Kashrut, as important as it is really something like a space holder between ourselves and the redemptive days of Messiah. But this whole mystery of Kashrut is really wrapped up, summarized by one word. Why? Why this? Why not that? Of course, the brilliant scholar Mary Douglas pays close attention to the mystery of Kashrut in her brilliant book Leviticus as Literature. She stakes a claim that one of the overriding principles that unify the Torah, unify a Torah that was nevertheless written by many hands, is the principle that God's compassion extends to all living creatures, not just to human beings and not just to Jews. The covenant that God struck with Noah was a covenant that extended its concern over all life forms. Principle: God cares about all life. The earth is the Lord's. All creation belongs to God. No part of God's universe may be destroyed without God's permission. The laws of Leviticus and Deuteronomy are a way of inviting Jews in to respect God's sovereignty, to publicly and consistently show honor to the source of all life, to show honor to the source of all life by keeping the laws of Kashrut. Were animals approved as pure because they exemplified certain moral virtues? To all of my rabbi friends who believe so, probably not. Were certain things prohibited as a means of training us in the virtue of restraint? Probably not. Were certain practices prohibited because of an awareness of hygiene? Probably not. Was the human body to be treated as an altar upon which only certain substances can be consumed with the approval of God as a means of showing loyalty to God? Was understanding that showing obedience to the sovereign God of all life is far more important than whether this animal would be deemed acceptable, tahor, or that animal? And I think possibly so. Just think of this. Those of us who might observe only parts of the laws of Kashrut are still making a daily proclamation of the supremacy of life and the supremacy of God. Mystery upon mystery in our calendar and in our lives. Shabbat Shalom and happy birthday, Israel. Yom Huledet Sameach.